following is a GNC podcast production. Welcome to Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast.
Hello and welcome to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast where we talk about all the different ways we can psychologically break people for cheating at games. My name is Matt. With me, my co-host, who's been asleep for 5,000 years, Bill Barber. How's it going, Bill?
I wish I could sleep for 5,000 years. I'm so tired all the time lately.
Tell me about it. I'm fucking lucky to get 6 hours on any given night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's the week been for you, Bill?
Busy. That's the best way I can explain it. I finally gave in, turned the heat on, so that's a new thing.
Yeah, we did the same, but we also we got another cord of wood in, so we're up to about 3-ish cords. So we're most of it, I think a little bit more, and we should be good for the winter. So
that's good. Yeah, it's crazy too, because apparently next week it's gonna be in the 70s all week, so New England weather for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense up here. I mean, we get lucky and we don't have all of like the natural disasters, like we don't have tornadoes or like hurricanes that often up here, but like we just have like the most random weather I think ever.
No, but we get nor'easters, and those are nothing to shake a stick at. I should know.
Yeah.
Fucking
sad part is we're
fuck us up.
The sad part is we're just so like used to them though that like whenever they come through, it's just kind of like it happened.
Yeah, but everyone in my house is like so scarred by the sound of strong winds. Like every time we hear it, we all get like PTSD flashbacks. I swear to God. That's like everyone in the house cringes whenever the wind starts gusting.
That's like the one thing that I've noticed down here in Connecticut and Post and Mass is like all the trees have been like taken care of. So like there's the few that there is are monitored so they don't fall during like the storms. It's crazy because I remember up in when I was still living at home, I think every snowstorm it was like there was like a 80% chance we were going to lose power because a tree was going to go down on the lines.
Yeah, well, it also depends on what neighborhood you live in. Because I remember like when I lived at my mom's house, like for some reason the grid she was on and just where we were, like I guess topographically, because we were like higher up than a lot of other places around us. For some we like very rarely ever lost power. Like everyone around us will have lost power and we'd be fine. And even when we did, we had a generator, so it wasn't a big deal.
I've yet to lose power for more than like a minute up down here. Like I think like most of the time it'll like flicker for maybe like a second and then it will come back.
I think it's happened once since Francis was born.
Yeah, because I know back home, like there was like points where it'd be out for like a week and it'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah, there was a couple of bad ones. It was usually during like the heavy snowfalls, but we haven't really had heavy snowfalls in a while.
The worst one I can think of was back in 2011. It was right at the end of summer. We had this like massive hurricane came through and it just like annihilated like pretty much all the power lines, like storms and stuff. Like we had no power for like 2 weeks straight. And I remember this because it literally coincided with the start of the school year, going into junior year of high school. So I had no power, no ability to bathe. I had to bathe in a fucking pool out in the backyard with a hose. That was wonderful.
Oh, sure. At least it was summer or like late summer.
Yeah, it still wasn't.
Could have been worse.
It was ice cold hose water, which I'm amazed that even worked because we had wells. So like it was.
Oh, you had well water too?
I didn't even have a hose. I was using a water bottle. It was even worse. Like it was bad. Like
Jesus.
Thank God, like being a dude, you can get away with a couple days, but
yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I remember my mom and Alex, they would get up at like 1 in the morning to go drive like 5 towns over to go use like one of the showers at my mom's work because that was like just the only option. It was bad.
Hmm.
Like
Yikes.
I still remember I
I
got in an
remember.
argument with my English teacher because this was during the era of schools where they were like everything has to be done online now. Like you can't just do anything pen and paper anymore.
Mhm.
And I didn't do any of the work because I had no power. And one of my favorite arguments with my teacher, because she had no response to this, was she had asked me why I didn't just go to the library and do it. And I looked her in the face and said, I'm not going to pay money to do homework. Are you fucking stupid? Like
Yeah,
I
that's
I
fair.
gave her this like I looked at her dead in the face, and she like wanted to argue back, but like realistically, like what was she gonna say?
Yeah, I'd be like, are you gonna pay for me to do it?
Yeah, I was
Like, I'm in high
I'm like
school. How much disposable cash do you think I have?
yeah, and she also like tried to argue, well, you could use the school computers. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have a fucking ride because the late bus at the time didn't go back to our fucking neighborhood because it
Mhm.
was because I went to a multi-town school and my parents had to
Yeah,
work, so how was I gonna get home? Fun
yeah.
stuff like that.
Believe it or not, computers don't solve everything.
Yeah, no, it was a disaster, and they didn't understand because we were also a multi-town school. It was only the people from my town that were suffering from no power.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
was one of the last grades in my school that was like strictly pen and paper.
yeah,
Like,
we were for the most part. We had a few random teachers that were like gung ho about this technology shit, and I was like this sucks. Like,
I mean, they used um like the newfangled like projectors and stuff like that, like in the classroom. But as far as like, take home work, it was all paper, which I appreciated.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't do homework once my last like 2 years of high school, but
Yeah, I wasn't very good about doing it. Even when I was trying to do better in school, I still wasn't very good about homework.
well, most of my teachers were made it very apparent that homework was meaningless. So I would just I would either bullshit it or I would do it like 20 minutes before class started and just be like, whatever.
I would just do it in class. At least for the classes that would give it out like early and be like, oh, like halfway through the class, like this is your homework. And I either do it in that class or I do it in the next class before I get that class's homework.
Yeah. Well, some teachers tried to be smart about it and they'd be like, well, you have to show your work. And I'm like, all right. So I just wrote like absolute nonsense. And I was like, there's my work. How does it make
Hmm.
sense? I don't know. Fucking math doesn't make sense. So
Yeah, I did it right in front of you. You didn't see a calculator, did you?
but we were in the calculator generation where like by then my favorite part about our generation of school was we started out in that generation where like they were like anti everything, and then by the time we finished, they were transitioning into like everything was like given to you.
Hmm.
'Cause I
Yeah,
still
because when
remember growing up.
we were growing up, there was still like a period of time where all the adults thought the whole internet computer revolution was just a fad and it was going to fade out eventually.
Well, we had that, and we also then had like some of the crazy like they thought technology was going to be way more advanced than it ended up being. Because like I remember, I was through that really awful period of time where like they weren't teaching us certain things because they assumed it wasn't going to matter in the future. Like my favorite was they skipped handwriting because they assumed everything was going to be typed. And then, but they only would teach us cursive because they thought everything was going to be written in cursive. That was
Yeah, I
funny.
remember that. Yeah, they
They
really
also
pushed the cursive.
neglected to teach us how to tell time because they assumed everything was going to be digital in the future. Like it was such a weird backwards way of thinking, especially considering you look at it now and you're like, wow, I never like that didn't happen.
I was lucky in that regard because they pushed that by like first grade. You're like, no, you got to learn the analog clock. Like,
I figured out the analog clock by just staring at it for a good amount of time and eventually just kind of figuring it out. Like,
I mean, considering all the clocks in the school were that like all the way through school, like,
yeah, it's such a weird time. I mean, I don't know what kids go through nowadays because I'm sure they have to deal with all sorts of other weird shit. I mean, granted, the biggest thing we had to learn was like, don't trust anyone on the internet. Like, don't make friends on the internet. And like, surprise, surprise, that's how everyone makes friends now.
yeah. It was wild to me is like the whole like push for like technological like tools and stuff for teaching in school and whatnot. Uh like Xander's backpack is like way heavier than any backpack I had in school, which is like really bizarre because like almost all of his homework is on the computer. So it's like, what is all this stuff? Like, why are they giving you all this shit? Why do you need to lug this around?
Do they
Doesn't
even
make any
still
sense.
do they still have the big ass textbooks, or are they beyond that now?
I've never seen him with a textbook, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember our big thing was we just had the fucking giant textbooks that weighed like 5,000 pounds.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I've never seen the kid with a textbook, but his backpack weighs like 1,000 pounds.
I still remember like a teacher would always like whenever we'd complain about the textbooks and how much they weighed, they'd either like give us this like, oh, you can just read them online. And it's like, yeah, but not everyone has computers at this point. Like it doesn't always work. And how are we supposed to have them in class? But then also like they'd be like, oh, they're not that heavy. And I'm like literally like sitting here like my sister broke a fucking rib from the backpacks being too heavy. I just want to point that out. Like that happened.
Yeah,
I remember I had to like carry Alex's books for like a week because she couldn't walk. Like that was bad.
It's freaking wild.
Yeah. I don't miss school at all. Like I'll never understand the people who are like, I miss school. That was a fun time of my life. I'm like, no, I don't miss that at all.
I mean, if I could go back in time to like that point in my life with all my knowledge and experience and redo it the smart way, then yeah, but if I had to like go back and just kind of blink and all the years between have just disappeared and I am myself from then, no, not in a million years.
No, I prefer I much prefer post high school life.
Yeah, for sure. Like the good like 5 years or so after graduated, like that was like the golden years right there.
See, not quite for me because I was working night shift, but
that's fair.
Yeah, I know. I do miss a lot of. I missed that point where I didn't have a lot of responsibility and bills to pay, but
Yeah,
that's part of
it.
growing up.
But yeah, aside from that, this week I have watched some more anime. I have finally got around to watching Durarara 2, which was really interesting. I really like the series. I believe I mentioned before it's the same author who wrote Bakano. And it has a lot of like the DNA of Bakano in it, like with the big ensemble cast and but it's modern day Japan, and instead of like multiple stories taking place over multiple years, it's all like happening at the same time. And you will jump perspectives to different characters and stuff, but it's all one big story with numerous branches. So I really like the way it works in that regard. It's a very fun series, and there are a few references to Bakano where it is definitely in the same universe.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of anime this week. This was more of a reading week for me. Between comics and manga, I was just catching up on some stuff.
That's fair.
Sometimes you just need a break. Last thing I watched was I finished Italia, Axis Powers.
The first season or the whole thing?
Just Axis Powers for now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I went through the whole thing. It's such a quick watch anyway. It's so easy to just kind of have on while you're doing other stuff.
Yeah, that show is so like they could never get away with that one nowadays.
It's Chaos the anime.
Oh yeah, there's so much like what you have to put into context whenever you watch that show that this is Japan and Japan don't give a fuck, because my god, the amount of fucking racist shit that goes in that show. I'm like, holy fuck.
It was also a good few years ago too, because there's this whole like subplot between Russia and Ukraine about how they're like love each other so much, and it's just like, wow, that aged very poorly.
I couldn't get past the fact that Ukraine's characterization is basically just a girl with giant tits and they make bongo sounds whenever she walks around.
Yeah, well, there always has to be one, right?
I was just like, what the fuck does this have to do with Ukraine? But okay.
I don't know. But yeah, I finished that up last week. I watched Durarara 2 this week, and I had another day of anime watching to do, so I ended up starting Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro.
Oh, what'd you think of that first episode?
I mean, the whole thing, really. I mean, it's
I mean, the first
if I
episode
if
is rough, but it
yeah,
gets a lot better after that.
it does, but like it's like Stockholm Syndrome, the anime.
It gets better. It's very rough at first, though.
Well,
Like,
I'm halfway through the second season right now, and it's there's still a whole, like yeah, it's where at the beginning it's like just straight up gaslighting, and then by like towards where I'm at now, it's like she has like reverse Stockholm syndrome, and now she likes him. Like I don't know, it's weird.
I won't spoil anything because I've read more of the manga, but I think the implication is she's always liked him. It's just it's one of those situations where this is just girls are complicated.
I feel like it's one of those things where she's just trying to like poke him into being more assertive, but
Yeah, there's a lot of interpretations on how to view that show is weirdly complicated for what it, especially considering it's the artist behind that manga uh was mostly known for porn, some very fucked up porn.
jeez.
Yeah, don't have for anyone who's a fan of that show, don't ever look up Nanashi's background stuff. It's wow. um,
Yikes.
yeah.
Yikes. But
Fun
yeah, no,
fun thing about that show though is like if the roles were reversed and Nagatoro was a male character and Senpai was a female character, oh my god, that show would not be taken seriously at all. Like holy shit.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny how like, changing just like one detail like that can completely change the context of a series.
Well, it's funny if that was an American show, I don't think it would have made it past like a couple episodes because it is such that first episode is fucking rough. No, it's even worse than the manga, honestly.
Well, I don't know, there's just some things that like like you just can't break out of that medium.
Hmm.
Like that's why like when I heard that Kaguya-sama had a live action adaptation, I'm like, I just don't see how that would work in live action. The series is too animated. It would either suffer because they're trying too hard to make it like the anime and it would be unrealistic, or they would try to go the more realistic route and it would suffer because like the characters wouldn't be as vibrant as they are in the anime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's just some things that you just can't have in any other medium. It has to be anime or it can't exist.
Hmm. Yeah, honestly, it's uh that manga is done
Speaking
though, so realistically it should get a third season at some point.
hmm. Speaking of anime, though, I watched the second episode of Daima yesterday. Holy crap, they are dropping so much lore just in those first two episodes.
I'm
Like
gonna have to wait for the
completely
dub.
out of
But
nowhere. Uh, Early mid-November is when the dub will be coming. Are you gonna be watching it week to week, or are you gonna wait until it's done to binge watch it?
I'll see what I'm doing when it comes out. If I'm
That's
not doing
fair.
much, I might do it like I did with Slime and week to week watch it.
Well, I mean, it is kind of an experience too, like watching it week to week and like being with Dragon Ball specifically, and apparently this season's only gonna or this series is only gonna be like 20 episodes. At least that's all that's planned right now. I don't know if it's supposed to go further than that, but as of right now, as far as release dates go, they only have up to 20 episodes scheduled. So
I think it depends on how well it does, honestly.
I mean, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. It looks fucking gorgeous. I can tell you that much. Also, I guess the character that's going to be like essentially doing like the call to action for them all to go to the demon realm. Apparently, the English voice actor who's going to be playing him is Aaron Dismuke.
Oh, cool. So it's gonna be the president. Good.
Yeah, he's going to play a blue guy from the demon realm who has a gun.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh. Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's gonna be weird because we're gonna have like two separate continuities going on, but yeah, that's Dragon Ball for you.
Well, who knows? Maybe by the end it'll wrap up in a way that ties it in with Super.
It just becomes super all of a sudden. Uh,
Who knows? Who knows? But at this
or it'll
point, like
or it'll be
by
like
the time
GT and
Daima's, huh?
I said, or it'll be like GT and they'll be like, it's just over here. It
Yeah,
exists there.
it's possible. I think at this point, though, by the time Dime is finished, I think they will have pretty much filled in the entire 10 years between Boo and Oob. Like, I think we'll have one more arc in Super that'll like get through that, and then that full 10-year time skip from the end of Z will have filled up that whole bit.
Yeah, and then we'll see how they try to connect them together, if they even do.
Well,
because for all we know, Super is still an alternate universe, and it might change everything.
We'll see. I mean, like I said, they did change some stuff around at the beginning of Daimo that might make it not able to exist in the same universe as Super. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and we can't even say Toriyama forgot anymore. It's really sad.
Well, to be fair, he went over all the scripts for this show.
True.
He gave a much more thorough outline of this show than he did for anything else. And then when they finished writing this, when Toei finished writing the scripts, they gave them to him and he had to approve them. So this has the most Toriyama in it out of any other Dragon Ball anime that's come out since Z.
True. Well, we'll have to wait and see on that.
I'm excited. I will refrain from telling you too much because I want you to be able to experience it, but I'm also very excited to talk about it.
I'm sure it'll be a better experience than the Inuyasha fans got, so.
That's fair.
God. We'll have to cover Yashihime at some time, just so he can go through that wonderful experience.
I'm sure. Well, next year I'm planning for, as far as anime watching goes, I'm planning on doing like more of the longer series, like whether they're rewatches or some of the newer ones that I still haven't watched, like Demon Slayer and My Hero and stuff. So that's what next year is going to be. It's going to be the big haul, trying to get through all the bigger shows that I've neglected and rewatching some that I haven't seen in a long time, like Inuyasha.
Yeah, I got you. But yeah, I guess we should probably transition into our topic though for this episode. I think we've waffled on enough. Alex hates when I say waffle, so I'm going to just keep saying it now.
Hey, it works. I like it.
So
I am a definite waffle stan over pancakes. And while I think French toast is the superior breakfast food, I feel like waffle is a much more acceptable breakfast food for daily consumption. So
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on team French
occasion.
toast. Yeah,
French toast is special occasion food.
I don't know how to start. So we're doing
I throw you off
a little bit. I was trying to throw a dig at Alex. A friendly dig, I should say. Because last night she was like waffling. I hate when you say that. And I was like, oh good, I'm gonna keep saying it then.
That's okay. You can dig on her all you want. I doubt she listens to the show.
Well, she didn't realize that the anniversary special is like a couple weeks out at the time of this recording. Because she was scrubbing through the most recent episode just because she wants to see the questions. And she couldn't find them, and I was like, oh, that's because it's not out yet. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're like a month ahead.
Yeah, I think it's first week in November. But that being said, let's get to our topic. We're doing manga retrospective. Yeah, the Yu-Gi-Oh manga.
Yep, the first 7 volumes, the pre-Duel Monsters manga of Yu-Gi-Oh.
The stuff that makes the anime make so much more fucking sense. Like, holy shit. Like,
oh yeah, when they so much.
When people always say like the start of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, the one that everyone knows was kind of butchered. Yeah, they were right, because holy fuck, like there is a lot of shit that just gets cut out.
This is why I always say, like, if somebody's fine with watching subs, definitely watch season 0, because a lot of the stuff that we're covering here in the manga, a lot of that was adapted into season 0.
Yes. And I guess we should start with a little bit of backstory. The Yu-Gi-Oh manga started in 1996, so year after I was born. And it ran all the way up until 2004, 38 volumes. So it actually ran for a lot longer than I thought it did.
Oh, the manga was already
Um,
done by 2004. I didn't realize that.
yeah, it finished March 8th, 2004.
Hmm.
And it was written by the late Kazuki Takahashi, who actually passed away only a couple of years ago,
Yeah, I
in
think it was
2022.
shortly. I think it was shortly after Kentaro Miura passed away.
Yeah, and his death was like bizarre because I think he was actually saving a bunch of people, like who were
Mhm.
like drowning. It was weird. It was just one of those things where it was like, wow, it's like just like things you don't expect. He had been
Yeah.
retired for a while though. Like he retired in 2020, I guess.
Mhm.
So Yu-Gi-Oh is officially done. Like it's one of those things where Konami's just gonna milk the shit out of it now to make money. Um,
It's about right. Although I am
the manga,
excited for that classic video game collection that they're planning on releasing at some point soon.
yeah, that'll be cool. Um, that being said, though, the manga itself, holy fuck, is it dark?
Oh yeah, so much darker than anything you saw in the anime, and that says a lot because there are some scenes in the anime that even the English version kind of pushed it a little bit for a kids show.
There's also a lot of things I noticed in the English anime that they were like adaptions of arcs from this first section that they just kind of repurposed for the anime. Like
Mhm.
notably the Bakura episode of the anime is very much an adaptation of something that happens in the manga a lot earlier.
Yeah, for sure.
Um One thing before we kind of go over the plot I also want to bring up is you had mentioned it off Mike, but the art style is holy crap a lot different than the anime.
Oh yeah, it's I don't know, it's just something about the way this guy draws. Like every single panel was just so like lovingly done. Like
To,
and it really like accentuates like the differences between like light Yugi and dark Yugi um and it takes a while for him to really kind of like get a full handle on the character designs. Like I
yeah,
think it
because
takes
those
like a good
first
volume.
those first couple chapters, I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." Um,
Yeah, it takes a good like full volume or so before they really start to look more like what we're familiar with.
yeah, because I guess the best to describe his art as opposed to anime the anime, for those who know, is the art style in that show is extremely angular. Like everybody's pointy as fuck in that show.
Oh yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
the manga is also kind of angular, but it's got a inherent softness to it that kind of makes it
Mhm.
stand out a lot better than the anime, where everyone looks like they're cut and paste templates at times.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
this manga
And
is
just about
also
everybody they go to school with is a fucking psycho.
yeah. I mean, even Yugi's kind of a psycho in the anime of the manga at first.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
that also being said, this manga is weirdly horny. Like,
Oh yeah, this is it kind of puts the Pokemon one to shame. Like this one is way hornier.
the Pokemon one is like weirdly unintentionally horny. Like this one is just straight up like I'm gonna use the American names a lot because that's how my brain works. We see Anzu's ass like 5 times, like within like the first like 4 chapters.
Oh yeah, you see her panties. There's a whole bit where like when she first meets Yugi's grandpa, and he's like, "Oh, your boobs are filling out quite nicely."
Yeah, it's like okay. There's the
Yeah.
point where they're at the water park and like Yugi's like pressed up into her boobs the entire time. It's like this is wonderful.
Mhm. And it's so weird too because he has like the body of like a little kid, so it's just super awkward.
Yeah, Yugi's like that. He actually references it a lot where he's like, "Hey, I'm a high schooler," and it's like, "Yeah, sure, Yugi."
He's like, "Hey, I'm 16." It's like, "What?"
And everyone's like, "Sure, you are, little
You look
boy."
like you're 9.
Yeah, like
It's too funny.
reading this, I was like, "Wow, what an." Also, I did enjoy that the local Viz was nice enough to put in those little like asterisks, like basically being like, "This character's name was this in the show," just in case you were confused.
Mhm.
Because I guess to preface it, for people who only watch the anime, Teia's name is Anzu, Joey is Juinchi, and Tristan
Jonochi.
Jinochi, and Tristan is Honda.
Hmm.
Everyone else, for the most part, is pretty much the same. Those are the
Yeah,
only ones
like
that really.
Kaiba's still Seto Kaiba, Mokuba's still Mokuba Kaiba.
Bakura is still.
Yugimoto is the same.
Yep.
Yep, Bakura is the same.
Ryoto Bakura, even though his first name never gets said.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I knew what it was just from playing the video games because the video games always had it for some reason. But
It only gets like mentioned when it's like his like introduction panel, and then it's just like he's just Bakura for the rest. Well, I guess because in Japan they refer to each other by last names before first names, unless you're like
Mhm.
on very good terms. It's different culture.
Yeah.
But that being said, the manga starts out fucking Junichi and Honda are fucking a-holes, like right off the bat.
Oh yeah. They even like call attention to the fact that they are bullies and like are just totally fine with it.
Everybody's a fucking bully in the show, in this manga, I swear to God.
Oh, for sure. Like I don't know. I feel like he was trying to say something with this. Like I'm wondering how high schools were in like the 80s and 90s in Japan. It must have been a rough time. I feel
It's
like it's a common
hilarious.
theme for mangas of this era.
It's hilarious too because I swear to God, the only normal fucking people in this in that school are Yugi and Anzu, but like even they're kind of weird.
Yeah, even that's a stretch. Because Yugi is definitely a perv.
Yeah, he's
And
so weirdly pervy in this, and it's like this is so weird when you've only seen the anime.
yeah, and they make multiple references to like other manga. Like I'm pretty sure in the first chapter they make a Dragon Ball reference.
Yeah, they do. At least that's what I
Um,
think it was.
and then also there was a point where they were like waiting for like them to post like test scores or whatever. Because in this they actually go to school. Um,
Yeah,
and they were posting up the test scores, and we find out that Yuki's actually not very smart. He does very poorly in school. He's like barely above Janochi and Honda.
yeah, it's one of those things where like because the anime basically like the school aspect of the anime basically gets forgotten after episode 2
Mhm.
because they spend the trading card games people trade also the trading card game doesn't appear for quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's until like maybe through like the second volume or something that it's even introduced, and it's not even under the same name. I believe it's called like Magic and Wizards.
Yeah, because they were still the early days where they were kind of figuring stuff out.
Hmm.
Also, the Kaiba stuff happens so much earlier in the manga.
Yeah, well, like their first meeting with him, but then like the whole like Death Tea thing, which ends with like the duel we all remember from episode 1 of the show. Um, that happens like with like volume 5 or 6.
Hmm. I
So
like how
like that
before
actually
that
takes a little bit to get to that point.
I like how before that fight happens though, we get this entire like virtual we what is with this show this series in virtual world arcs? I swear to God.
I don't know.
Um I will say though, I loved the explanation for why Kaiba rips up the blue eyes.
You have to remind me.
So because in the show, he just rips it up randomly for no reason. Um in the manga, it's implied that the reason he did it is because the card refused to listen to him.
Right. Yeah, because of the whole heart of the cards thing. It was like, oh, like this is my grandpa's card. I won't listen to you because. So, like, just for context to anyone who hasn't read it before, the first because Yuki and Kaiba actually duel once before like the duel that we all remember from episode 1.
Hmm.
And in that duel, this is like like the whole virtual projectors for duel monsters and all that stuff wasn't a thing yet. That was only invented because Dark Yugi, or the other Yugi as they refer to it in the manga, used his magical power to create illusions of the monsters.
Hmm.
And like Kaiba thought that was so like crazy and cool that he ended up inventing the holographic technology for the game, and that's why that exists in the manga.
Yeah. It's amazing how much shit makes so much more sense in the anime once you read this first like section of the manga.
Yeah, and there's so I love the fact that the card game takes it like I mean, obviously, it takes a back seat. It doesn't even exist for a good portion of it. And then even once it is introduced, it takes a while before we get to another card game. And
Yeah,
there's
because there's a
like,
lot of like different games in this series that aren't the card game.
oh yeah, like almost like because there was a lot of like isolated vignettes, like isolated stories. And in each one, it was a different kind of game that they were playing. It was some sort of different problem they had to overcome, and different kinds of shadow games that don't
Yeah,
revolve around cards.
like the manga has in a not in a literal sense, but in like a metaphorical sense, it's got like a monster of the week kind of like setup at first, where like
Mhm.
every chapter would be like so after Yugi builds the puzzle, he doesn't immediately become the Yami that everybody knows like from the show. Uh, his first appearance as Yami or Dark Yugi, as they refer to him in the manga, he's a fucking sociopath. Like,
Oh yeah,
his like fucking like slasher smile he has for like the first couple appearances is like, wow. I'm like, I'm like, we were robbed of this in the show.
oh yeah, for sure. He
But
set two
his
people on fire at separate
yeah,
occasions.
his first appearance is like he's playing a game called where it's like stab the money and whoever can get the most without stabbing themselves wins. And then of course the
Yeah,
guy he's playing with decides, I have a knife, I'll just stab you. And then Yugi's like, oh, you lose, death to you, because everyone just fucking dies in this book. It's fucking crazy.
yeah, because if you everybody that dies there goes crazy. Because it's like a whole thing where whenever he instigates a shadow game, if someone cheats at the rules, they have to play a penalty game, or there's like a penalty, um, like a supernatural penalty to them, so that you'll be stuck in some sort of illusion, or they'll be cursed, or they'll just die.
Oh yeah, because the first guy he thinks he's playing in a pile of money, but it's actually a pile of garbage outside the
Yeah,
school.
I actually, for the first time in a while, I took some notes. I actually made a list of all the different shadow games. Just in the portion that we read, there are a total of 34 different games that they play. Um, and I was just wondering, like, what were some of your favorite ones out of the ones we saw? Because there was a lot of them.
I love the first one just because like fucking sociopath Yugi was just funny to watch.
One of my favorites was what I titled in my list here, Extreme Ice Hockey,
Yeah, that was
because there was a
interesting.
bit they were doing a school festival chapter or two, which staple in manga and anime. There's always a school festival at some point, and school Yugi's class had decided to do like carnival games. Well, this a bunch of like jock guys come up and they're like, no, this is our spot. We always do like grilling here. We grill food here. So they just bring this gigantic fucking like beefy fucking griddle and just dump it in their spot and say, we're leaving this here. Deal with it. So of course, Dark Yugi shows up and he comes out with like this like block of ice with explosives frozen into the middle, and he says, "We're gonna play table hockey."
Yeah,
And when it melts down to the point where it hits the explosives, you better hope it's not on your side. That's pretty
yeah.
much what that game was. It was pretty wild.
I like the one that was like there's an entire chapter that's they're making parodying like Tamagotchi pets, and
Yep.
like Yugi like just like makes them real and fucking like goes after the fucking bully of the week,
Yep. That
who
was a
was
good
like
one.
at the expense of Anzu's pet, because of course hers is the one that dies. It's like, wow, that was nice. Wonderful.
It figures. Well, apparently, like even in that, like they only had a life cycle of like what 18 days or something like that.
Yeah. There was
It's
also
weird.
there was the Rock'em Sock'em robot fad that went on for like 20 minutes.
Yep. Yep.
I
That
do
was one
like
of the
though that
later ones, wasn't it?
I believe so. It was because it's like the whole like bully of the week arc thing goes on for a while, where it's just like it's a different game this day, and how is Dark Yugi gonna ruin someone's life this time?
Yeah, with the exception of the Kaiba brothers and Bakura, that's pretty much the entirety of these 7 volumes. Like the last volume, I think, was entirely Bakura.
Yeah, because oh well, actually no, we forgot about the Shoddy arc, because that's way earlier in the
Right,
manga than it is in the anime.
right.
He
Yeah,
actually
because they.
uses the scales. He uses the scales, the things that are utterly ignored for the entire anime.
Yeah, I don't think anybody uses the scales for anything until they go to ancient Egypt in the anime.
Yeah, like he's just straight up walking around with the Millennium Scales. And it's like, oh, that's the thing that never gets referenced.
Yeah, it's like nobody knew what that did if you just watched the anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there was a whole thing where when Shadi gets introduced, because I think it was like one of Grandpa Moto's friends, like archaeological friends, like asked if they could put the Millennium Puzzle on display at a museum,
And
and
immediately
Shadi
tries
was
to sell it.
yeah, and like Shadi shows up and he's like, "Oh, you guys stole all this shit from Pharaoh tombs, so now I'm gonna like test your hearts, and if you're greedy and evil, I'm just gonna kill you." And
Yeah.
he kills one of the guys, and like basically he encounters Yugi and is like, "Oh, you finished the Millennium Puzzle. I gotta test you." And pretty much is like he's ready to kill everybody there, all of his friends, like straight up.
It's
And they got to do
basically
like
the
all these different
same
like puzzle
as
games.
it's basically the same as the anime adaptation, only it's a lot darker, and normal Yugi doesn't appear in his subconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was
Instead, I think
you're right.
Dark Yugi instead is like, he's like, hey, I don't like that you're here, but I'm not going to kill you because you've made it this far, but I'm going to ask you to kindly fuck off.
Yeah, I'm gonna kindly ask you to exit my mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's like, see, I'm not all bad. I helped you out of the hole.
he's like, you might be useful later, so I'm going to let you live.
Hmm. But yeah, so what were some of the other ones?
Um, oh yeah, Mokuba
Oh,
had actually had a character in this.
yeah, Mokuba was a little asshole, and it was one of those things. Like before I read the manga, every time I would play a Yu-Gi-Oh video game, there would always be like, whenever Mokuba would show up, he'd always have like this smirk on his face, and he would just be such a little asshole. I'm like, why is Mokuba such a dick in video games? Now reading the manga, I get it because he was a fucking asshole.
Yeah, like he was like in the anime. The most we get is like that one very brief arc in the beginning during Duelist Kingdom where he like challenges Yugi, but like that's over after like a minute. So
Yeah. And then by that
uh,
point, he's like, "Yeah, no, I like I'm still gonna side with my brother on a lot of things, but I still like you guys, so I'm gonna be nice."
I did like
Yeah.
the way they explained how Mokuba becomes nicer though to the group is because he challenges Yugi to like this weird capsule game, which I swear to God at first I thought was Dungeon Dice Monsters.
No, there is
Um,
an arc for that in the manga later on, though.
yeah, I assume that's what I assumed, but I was like, I was like, okay, we got another random game, and
Mhm.
Yugi, of course, beats him because they really do explain the whole King of Games thing with Dark Yugi.
Mhm.
Um, but he, of course, beats Mokuba, and then Kaiba's got these weird like, hello, motorcycle man. Um, I was, I was gonna say, Kaiba's got this weird like, Kaiba's just like evil Kaiba has like is way more sadistic than he was in the anime here.
Oh
Um,
yeah, he employs a serial killer at one point.
yeah, he's got this whole like gimmick where like he has these like dual boxes where if you lose the game, you basically go through like fucking hell on earth before you get out.
Yeah, they
And
basically
he's
like put you through this like holographic like hellscape where like apparently it's tested and proven that you will lose your mind within 10 minutes of being in there.
yeah, wonderful man. And Kaiba leaves his brother in there when Mokuba inevitably loses to Yugi. He's like, I don't care about losers, and he just leaves him in there because Kaiba's just a sadistic asshole by this point. And
Yeah, he's like,
Yugi,
I didn't want you to challenge Yugi at all. So the fact that you did it and lost, well, guess what? You still get the penalty.
yeah. But of course, Yugi has a heart, and he pulls him out, and then that's kind of where like the whole that friendship kind of starts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we also get a bit more of the backstory of Kaiba, the Kaiba brothers, like where we see they get adopted by the older Kaiba. I forget his name right now.
In the anime, it was Gozaburo. I don't know if that's his actual name in the manga because they didn't say it.
Yeah. We didn't understand though how he ends up becoming the sadistic asshole he was because it's implied that I'll just call him Gozaboro for now. He basically mind tortures him into becoming basically a mini version of himself.
Yeah,
Um,
conditioned him to be a piece of shit.
yeah, and then Kaiba ends up doing a hostile takeover of the company, and rather than accepting it, he ends up just committing suicide, being like, "Ha, you win," and then just dies. It's like,
Yeah, like the way it's like explained in or shown in the manga is Gozaburo like looks at him, he's like, "This is what losers deserve," and he jumps out the fucking window.
yeah, it's like, damn. And then I'm
So like that
assuming,
kind of it also kind of explains like why Kaiba has this hang up about Yugi. It like explains so much more to that context because he literally watched his dad kill himself because he lost to Seto. And he's like, he has that whole like thing drilled into his mind, like this is what losers deserve. So like that
yeah.
explains why he has such a fucking serious vendetta against that one loss he had.
I also found it really fucked up that when Dark Yugi beats Kaiba the first time, his punishment for Kaiba is like, oh, I left him in the card for a little bit. He'll get out eventually, but I just want to fuck with him for a little while.
Yeah, the first
That's
time
like,
at least, and the second time he did like the mind crush.
yeah, like in the anime, got killed off his evil side.
Don't know why he doesn't just do that to everybody, but whatever.
Because Dark Yugi at first is kind of an asshole himself and doesn't care.
Yeah. Again, he set 2 people on fire.
I do like the progression of Dark Yugi though, where like he starts off as like this like absolutely sadistic like fucking like psychopath, and then like progressively every time he appears, he's less and less like the slasher smile eventually goes away, and he kind of becomes more of the Yami that we know from the anime.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Which
in his defense, he only does that psychotic shit if someone like deserves it. Like if they bring it on themselves,
yeah,
like like that kind of shit only happens if you're either A, cheat, or B, trying to fucking like kill the other person.
yeah. I just
So I
find it
mean, it is deserved.
I just find it funny that like in the early chapters, like the thing that triggers Dark Yugi is just like Yugi being minorly inconvenienced or something. Like he's like, I'm mildly annoyed. Time to come out and
Or
kill somebody.
someone stole Janochi's shoes.
Yeah, that was a chapter. Um,
It
also,
actually happens.
Yep, Anzu gets kidnapped like every other chapter too. I thought that was mostly an anime trope, but I was like, nope, nope. She's always getting kidnapped.
Oh yeah, the weird fortune teller kid who like was chloroformed Anzu and was like ready to, yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I
pretty
was like,
fucked up.
I'm like, yep, this is a manga, all right. Also,
This for kids. For
also
kids.
Shoddy's freaking Rue Goldberg like machine that he has built, where she's like standing on this like platform that's supported by a rope, and like if they lose, the rope just breaks and she falls to her death. But if they win, then it launches the key towards her and it'll free her brain, because she gets fucking brainwashed all the time in this series apparently.
And it's that thing always bothered me, even going all the way back to watching it in season 0. That always bothered me because if this was real life, you know, and that happened, you were standing on that platform, brainwashed, and the key touches you and it frees you from the brainwashing. You wake up in that scenario, you're gonna fucking fall. Like I don't care who you
Oh yeah,
are, like just the shock, like surprise or like the grogginess of waking up, like you're gonna fall before you even realize you're standing there.
yeah. Well, because they even play with that a little, where like Junichi's like holding it up underneath, and he's like, Anzu, get the fuck off the thing, and she's like, I can't, I'm scared, and he's like, we don't have
Yeah.
time for this.
Yeah, while he's got like the zombified like professor climbing after him. Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that was a thing for a little while too. Forgot about that.
I love how by the end of that, the dude like gets cured of the thing by touching
But
the
his
key.
teeth are still
And he
jacked
wakes up and he's like, what the fuck? I got no teeth left. What happened? Because
There
he
are
got
some
like bashed in the
fucking
face with like a lamp or something, and then Janochi like punched the half of his other teeth out.
yeah,
So the dude's got like 4 teeth left.
yeah. I love the fact too that like there is some like sadistic fucking faces in this show. I'm like in this book. I'm like, damn, goddamn, like Grandpa. Some of his faces early on. I'm like, holy crap, dude.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a
Uh,
lot of weird stuff in here, but it's at the same time it was like such an entertaining read, and I really loved the Monster of the Week aspect of these first few volumes because it was such a page turner, and there was always some new crazy shadow game being played on the next one, and the fact that it
yeah,
didn't focus around just one particular game the whole time like made it really interesting.
no, that's true. Because like a lot of the time, I was always like, the whole time I'm like, this school is not real. But then I realized, well, of course it's not. There's fucking real monsters and shit going on. And I'm just like, this entire
Yeah,
world is supposed to be a joke.
yeah, for sure.
I like how they make a reference to like gag mangas too at one point, even though the early Yu-Gi-Oh stuff is very much a gag manga.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Excuse me.
So the Kaiba fight I found interesting. Like, it's a lot different than the one in the show.
The first one or like the Death Tea stuff?
The one that's based off of the actual anime fight, like where he actually goes against
Okay,
where he uses Exodia and everything.
gotcha. Yeah, so yeah, because that set up as like it was part of his like revenge plot because he lost once before that, and he opens up Kaiba Land, which
Yeah,
is
he's
basically
such,
a theme park skyscraper, and it starts out with like actually the duel that Kaiba had against Yugi's grandpa happens in front of a crowd, so like there
yeah,
was a lot of people who saw what happened. And then he's like, okay, well, I'll let your grandpa out of like the psycho, like lose your mind death chamber if you agree to take on the Death Tea, which is basically just a gauntlet of multiple different challenges that are so fucking stacked against him. It's not even funny.
yeah. This would have been a great arc to actually show in the anime.
Yeah. Which again, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend going and finding season 0. Pretty sure it's still on YouTube.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure um well, no, that might have been 4 Kids back when 4 Kids was still a thing. Oh, I'm sure Konami still has it on there. It's around. It's worth watching. But yeah, there's like there's like 5 stages to the Death Tea. I believe the first 3 happened without an audience, which makes sense because the first one was like basically extreme laser tag,
yeah,
where it was Yugi, Jinochi, and Honda against 3 like actual mercenaries, and
yes,
the mercenaries were given like pretty much live ammo, and they were given toys.
yes.
Um,
Because Kaiba's a fucking dick.
oh, and Honda had his his baby nephew, with him the whole time during all this.
Oh yeah,
drama.
who's like motorboating Anzu the entire time.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration. This baby is like fully sentient and talking with them and involved in everything and consistently pervy.
Yeah. Anzu's like just there for like comic relief half the time too, which is kind of sad.
Well, I that's one thing about this early section is I like that everybody has something to do. Like it's not just about like who's good at card games and who's not. Like everybody has a role in this series up to this point, and it's really well done. Like the characters all have their own parts to play, and they're not just cheerleaders.
Yeah. Like they are in the entire anime. Other than
Yeah,
Joey.
exactly. Um, but yeah, so they go against the mercenaries, and the only reason they're able to win is because Anzu had apparently gotten a job there as like a host for the Death Tea.
Oh yeah,
And
because she just
unbeknownst to
shows up
Kaiba,
and it's like, what?
yeah, because one of Kaiba's like subordinates had hired her, not knowing the connection. So, but she had an actual like live gun. So,
Yes, she did.
so they actually had one to use against the mercenaries, and ultimately they came out on top in that scenario. And then there was like a mini game between the first and second one where Kaiba's butler, who is apparently a certified expert of torture, they had to ride like a haunted ride, like on a little like not a roller coaster, like kind of like a Disney kind of ride, but it was all horror stuff. And
Yeah.
basically, they had to be completely silent, or they would have been electric chaired because they were all strapped into electric chairs.
Yep.
Do you remember how that one gets resolved?
Not off the top of my head.
So everyone's strapped into their electric chairs, and everyone's like losing their shit. Like if they make the slightest sound, they'll be zapped, and like it is like legit electric chairs. Like they will die. And the way that they got out of that was, um, because Honda's nephew was there. He wasn't strapped into a chair because he's a baby. So he crawled up to the butler and shat in his lap.
Yep, that's right.
Just left a turd on his lap, and he freaked out, made the noise, and he got zapped. And that was how they got out of that one.
Manga, gag manga.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. So that happened. So they get to the second like legit challenge, and it's like a legitimate haunted house where Kaiba employed a literal serial killer, basically Barry the Chopper from Full Metal Alchemist. And he changed Janochi to him. And they're just chained together, and he has to like either defeat him in combat or get out or whatever. Ultimately, he's able to. Actually, I think he sets him on fire.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that makes 3 people set on fire. So yeah, that happened.
I feel like the author had some demons, something that he had to just get out.
He had to have, man, because Yu-Gi-Oh is dark as shit. Like anyone who only watched the anime, you don't know Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
Especially if you watch the 4Kids version.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh is much darker than you remember. I'm trying to remember what the third. Oh yeah, the third one was Extreme Tetris.
Yep. Yes, it was.
Where they were stuck in a room where the only way out was like way up above them, and they were dropping these giant blocks where they had to dodge the blocks in the right order or they'd be crushed to death, and then had to let them build up enough so they could climb up to the exit.
Yeah.
I know there's that whole bit where like Honda gets stuck, like his jacket gets stuck between 2 of the blocks, and he's like, "Oh, go on without me, guys. It's fine. You know, you do what you got to do." And then he shows up later on, and he's just not wearing his coat. It's like, well, bro, why didn't you just take the coat off then and go with them? I mean, it ultimately ended up working out in the end, but
Honda's not very bright.
I mean, none of them are apparently. They're all have very, very poor test scores.
I'm not gonna lie. His voice actor in the original first couple episodes of the dub that was like really dumb and goofy, he fits this version of the character perfectly.
If I'm being honest with you, like about half of the time I was reading his voice as a bridge Tristan.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey guys,
because he gets that like much. Because I mean, in the later half of the anime, he has the much more like heroic voice, but like the first half, he's just got that really dumbass voice for no reason.
Yeah, I kept like flip flopping between the abridged voices and the 4Kids voices.
Well, I mean, whenever Janucci's on screen, it's always the weird Brooklyn accent where it's like Joey Wheeler.
You can't not read it in a Brooklyn accent. It's just one of those things.
Wayne Grayson, it's just Wayne Grayson is Joey at this point.
Yep. So yeah, once they get past the Extreme Tetris, as I call it, that's when Yugi goes up against Mokuba with the capsule monsters thing, which we already talked about a bit. So then it moves on to Yugi versus Kaiba, which is pretty much like beat for beat exactly the same as the anime episode 1 version.
Yeah, the arena is not nearly as grand as it is in the anime, because the anime, like by this point, he's like way more advanced with his technology.
Yeah, because in the anime, it's assumed that like that technology already existed, and like he had like built it up to a grand scale, and apparently mass produced them because they're fucking everywhere.
Yeah, because like in the anime by that point, we're already seeing tournaments with that stuff, and it's like in the manga, it's like not yet.
Well, in the manga, and you're gonna see this as you continue through. It's basically just a regular sized table that they're playing on, and they make like smaller holograms of it. Like, you know, like maybe the biggest of them. I mean, like Exodia and Blue Eyes and stuff, like they're bigger, but like for the most part, like the biggest you're gonna get is like the size of like a medium sized dog.
Yeah. Yep.
But and that's something you're gonna see a lot, like the big huge stadium, like that's not a thing really in the manga. I think they just did that in the anime to make it seem more grand.
So they could have the giant Hulk like monsters on screen, and it wouldn't look dumb, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Make it more interesting to the younger audiences, I guess. That's my guess. Um, but I like this version better, especially in the manga, because it feels like much more up close and personal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a little bit more realistic with like them having conversations and not being like a football field away.
No, 100%.
Um,
So I think after the Kaiba arc, then we get into the final arc, which is like all the Bakura stuff.
I think there was a couple other like smaller monster of the week stuff in between, but for the most part, yeah, it mostly just moved right into the course because we had the little yo-yo thing.
Oh yeah, that was so many random games, just one-off games.
Yeah, because there was a gang running around beating people up with yo-yos. Yeah, between Kaiba and Bakura, we had the love tester scavenger hunt.
All right, yep.
It was like the little Tamagotchi machine, but it was like a love tester to see like compatibility or whatever, and there was a whole thing with that. There was the game show that Jonochi was on trying to win money.
Oh yeah, yeah. His sister still hasn't been revealed yet, right?
Right. Although his alcoholic father has.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, there was the Extreme Rock'em Sock'em that we mentioned before. There was the Ferris wheel bomber.
Oh yeah, yeah. That whole arc with the Yugi and Anzu at the theme park,
Mm-hmm.
where like she
Then,
straight up the one guy like she's chilling at the pool, and that one guy comes up is like, hey, you alone? And she's like, oh my god, a perv. And this guy's like, I didn't do anything.
yeah, she's trying because she at this point she's aware of other Yugi and like she has a thing for him,
Yeah.
even though
Which
it's like the weirdest love triangle on the planet.
it's like I'm in love with him and his other self. It's like, hey
Yeah,
lady, you
it's
got problems.
it's bizarre. And then there was also like the weird like evil dragon card thing that was like based on feng shui.
Yeah. I felt bad for that
Uh,
poor bastard at the pool though. He legit didn't do anything wrong and then he gets beat up for no reason.
that kind of shit happens a lot.
I
Like you
know.
remember the one like I think it was like right before they got shanghaied to Kaiba's house when they were at the arcade and like this random dude dressed up like Bruce Lee just beat the absolute piss out of Yugi because he lost at a
Yeah,
video
because
game.
yeah. Like, okay. Yugi gets beat
That
up
was
a
wild.
lot in the manga.
Yeah, a lot.
Honestly, regular Yugi is pretty pathetic in the manga so far.
So far, I assume he's going to go through a similar arc that he goes through in the anime, like once we start getting into the dual monster stuff. But as of right now, he's pretty low on the totem pole.
I will say though, there is one scene that annoys the fuck out of me just because he does it clearly implies that he doesn't learn. Is the scene where Kaiba runs into him at the school when Yugi has the blue eyes. He's like, hey, can I just take a look at it? And Yugi's like, oh, sure, nothing wrong could happen here. And then immediately
Mm-hmm.
realizes Kaiba swapped the card with a fake. And
Yeah, well, I do love that he picked up on that immediately.
yeah, it annoys me because then we go to the anime and it's like the whole scene with Weevil later on. I'm like, you didn't learn, you dumbass.
Hmm. Well, at least at that point, like he didn't have any reason to be suspicious of Weevil. He was just a dude that he just met. But I mean, at the same time, almost everybody that Yugi meets is a piece of shit. So
Yeah, it's like the whole thought of like it's like you have like some of the rarest cards in the game. I'm gonna let this random stranger who's one of my direct competition hold them. Surely nothing bad will happen here.
yeah, in the middle of the ocean
Yeah, on a boat.
with the implications.
There's so much of a missed opportunity of like what could have been done if Yugi still had Exodia throughout the entire story.
Mhm. Yeah, no kidding. Of course, it would have been too easy, and then we wouldn't be able
Well,
to. He wouldn't be able to showcase all these other cool cards that he gets
true.
as the show goes along.
I just wish we could have got at least a few more fights, just because we could have had some of like some interesting ideas. Where like, oh, he has to get the 5 cards, but it's like he doesn't have just like extreme luck like he did the first time.
True. I don't
But
know.
yeah,
Um.
so
So
Bakura.
yeah. Shadow D&D.
Kind of, yeah.
Pretty much.
Also,
They
we
called
actually
it something
got
different, but it's D&D.
we also got like the first time the ring takes over him here, which is kind of like dark as fuck.
Yeah, because like it's implied at like when Bakura is introduced, like because he like meets them and he's like, they're all cool and they're like, oh, let's be friends and stuff, and he's like, yeah, like I really want to be friends and like play games and stuff with you guys, but like every time I play games with people, I black out and they go into a coma, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go through that again. So no. But then
We
like
also
evil Bakura takes over and he has different plans.
we also got a perfect explanation for because in the anime it's implied that the Millennium Ring is weird and it like doesn't like to be separated from its owner.
Mhm.
Um, we actually got a good explanation for how that works, where like the damn ring fucking like merges with Bakura, like it stabs its little points into his chest, and I'm like, holy fuck, like this is dark.
Yeah, yeah. Like
I mean,
the little sharp dangly bits that hang from it were literally like just freaking embedded into his chest.
we did get a
Yeah, it's
bit
pretty
more of
pretty
that
rough.
in Dark Side of Dimensions, like years later, like that explained a lot, but I like this explanation where it's like the ring is kind of just like very possessive
Hmm.
because I think the spirit of the ring is essentially tied to Bakura in a lot of ways.
No, I believe it's part of the same bloodline.
Yeah,
I
like
could
it's
be
an a
wrong, but I'm fairly certain it is.
it's similar to how like Yugi's a descendant of the pharaoh in a way.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, like they meet, they go through this whole thing, and then like um Bakura like doesn't show up to school one day, and they're like, "Oh, let's go visit him at his house because we just know where he lives." Apparently, um, so they go and visit him, and Bakura is about to tell them to leave, and instantly Shadow Bakura takes over. It's like, "Oh, come on in, we're gonna play a game,"
Yeah.
and they all pick their little characters and make their character sheets and stuff for D&D, and instantly things start going wrong.
Yeah, it's a bit more it's a bit less it's essentially an adaptation of the evil spirit of the ring arc from the anime where they basically do that little game where like, hey, let's all have our favorite cards in Yugi's deck and it'll be a fun little game thing, but instead it's D&D.
Yeah. Which I like this version better. And I loved that episode when I actually had that episode on VHS when I was a kid. And I loved that one, but I like this version of it better. I feel like it works better.
Well, it's basically the
Uh,
same idea. It's just not as fantastical.
hmm. Um, and also, I don't know if you picked up on this. Because everyone's character has the same name as their actual like selves, except Janochi. Did you notice his character name in D&D was Joey?
Oh, you know what? My brain is just so trained to him being Joey that I probably didn't even notice.
I literally I've read this portion of the manga a few times. I didn't notice it until this read when I was actually trying to pay attention to what was going on.
That's probably what happened with me. I probably saw it and just assumed, oh yeah, Joey, and then my brain kind of forgot. Oh yeah, he's not Joey in the manga.
Hmm. So yeah, you remember the episode of Pokemon when Ash goes to challenge Sabrina's gym and he loses and they all get like shrunken and put into that like little doll town or whatever, and everyone was
Yeah,
like everyone had like their souls like sealed into dolls and shit. That's essentially what Bakura has been doing all along. He gets people to play the D&D game with them, and when they lose, their souls get trapped inside their game piece. So he has this huge fucking collection of game pieces that are actual people. And that's kind of like almost instantly like they realize that something's not right about what's going on because the characters are like moving and talking on their own.
yeah. It's it's one of those things where it's like this is dark, and also the implications like what does he do with the bodies?
Well, I think the bodies themselves are just in a coma, so they're probably at the whatever hospital that's closest to them at the time.
So there's just thousands of bodies just in the hospital in comas
Mhm.
apparently.
And apparently, there's no limit to Like he's not limited to just sealing them into like the little figurines, because apparently he's also sealed some souls into the dice that he uses,
Yeah.
which he uses to cheat.
Yeah, but
So,
Dark Bakura is a fucking. If you thought Dark Yugi was a sociopath, who?
but there was like, I don't know, and it was cool because we get Zork, like, you know, Zork, like the big bad from the final arc of the anime,
Yeah.
appears in this. He's like the monster that they're trying to overcome in the D&D game, which I thought was really interesting. It was kind of like a big like foreshadowing moment to like the end game.
Hmm.
And then there was like some like little detail stuff that they threw in there as they were playing. Like I think at one point Jonochi cuts off Zork's arm, so like there was like a connection between Zork and Bakura. So when he cut off Zork's arm, good Bakura was able to control the arm that Zork no longer has. So he was kind of like, you know, fucking up evil Bakura's schemes and stuff on their behalf, and, you know, trying to make shit work.
Hmm.
It was really interesting, like the whole course of events. It's a really fun read. I really suggest anyone check it out.
Yeah, it's so weird reading it now after seeing the anime because it basically makes you realize that anime is such a whole bad adaptation of the manga.
It really is. Like I really wish we had like a true, like, faithful adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh, like from beginning to end.
I'm surprised they haven't like tried to redo the original anime at some point. I guess it's because Konami's lazy, but
I mean, it might happen in the future if they ever decide to stop making new shows, and like, you know, because they're still making new Yu-Gi-Oh shows and new Yu-Gi-Oh cards and video games, all this other stuff. But
yeah, because they gotta make money.
well, I mean, do you have any idea how much nostalgia they'd be able to play off of if they remade the original anime, but with like modern animation and like faithfully telling the story from the manga? Like,
Yeah, especially because like their animes aren't afraid to be dark nowadays. So
yeah, no kidding.
God, that would
Like
be such a
even like the ones that are more meant for kids, like for instance, Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai. Like that is very clearly a kid show, but it has its dark moments.
Hmm. No, it really does, and it's something that I'd like to see. I just don't know if Konami would ever do it because Konami is Konami.
Well, I mean, it isn't even necessarily that they would have to read. I mean, they could easily just, whoever holds the rights right now for season 0, if they dubbed that, that could be a whole separate series.
True.
You know,
I'm
it's
assuming
only like a regular season length. You know, it's not very long.
there's probably some sort of conflict between the studio that does the animation for Yu-Gi-Oh now and then Toei.
Yeah, because it was a different animation studio that did season 0.
I believe it was Toei
That's what I thought, but I didn't
because
want
I
to
know.
claim it as a statement of fact because I don't know for
Yeah,
sure.
I just remember too. Like I had a magazine that was like a Yu-Gi-Oh Insider magazine way back in the day, and like they had all these images from season 0, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like I have no recollection of
Mhm.
this at all.
Season 0 also has a movie as well.
Hmm.
I
It
believe
does.
like the Red Eyes is like the focal point of it.
That's interesting because like that that card is so associated with Joey nowadays.
Hmm. I don't even remember
But
like what the context of it was, but I know I watched it a long time ago.
hmm. So we that's pretty much where the what we read ends off with, I believe, right?
Hmm.
Because I'm
I
assuming
do
that
love the. I was going to say I do love like how I mentioned earlier how like good Bakura kind of gets control of that arm that they cut off of Zork.
hmm,
I love the way that evil Bakura like gets around that because
yeah,
he just like takes the hand and stabs it on one of the like figurines, like literally just like skewers his own hand just to keep it in place. Like,
yeah, Evil Bakura does not give a fuck. Like he literally is like, yeah, deal with that, and then move on with his plot.
yeah. I don't know. It was just over like beginning to end. I loved this whole section. It was like honestly, I mentioned it to you. I didn't want to stop reading once I got to the end point. Like I wanted to just keep going because it's just such a fun story.
Hmm. No, it is. Honestly, like I was thinking about it as well, but I don't have any more. I only have the two more volumes left in the 3-in-1, and then
Mhm.
I have to track down more at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really did enjoy the read through. It was shocking how different it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it'll even more so like as we go through more of the manga, because like yeah, we're gonna start getting into the territory of stuff that we saw in the anime, but like a lot of the stuff happens very differently. Like especially because we watched the 4 kids version of it, where it was like severely watered down.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, I think it'll probably be a bit before we get back to the Yu-Gi-Oh manga because we're gonna be cycling through to different mangas over the course just to keep things fresh.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, next time we'll definitely continue on. I'm not sure what the next manga we're gonna do going forward is. We'll probably figure that out off camera.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up the episode.
Yeah. What would you give for a rating for this section of manga?
I'd give it an 8, like a solid 8. I like where it's going. I'd like to see more of it before I have a more definitive thought on it. Um, it's definitely a lot more interesting than the anime kind of is in a lot of ways. So I'll give it
Mhm.
a major props for that. Um, it is surprisingly dark though. Like if you're not expecting that going in, it is kind of shocking to someone who has
Surprise!
never.
Yeah, it's surprisingly dark and more pervy than you would think.
Yeah, it's very much a product of the early 90s and early 2000s. It is I think the best way to describe it is it is a trip.
For sure. For sure. I highly recommend anybody who hasn't read the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, please do so. The entirety of it is on the Shonen Jump streaming app for $3 a month. You get their whole library available to read, which includes Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, not Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto. Like it has tons of stuff on there. Highly recommend.
Um but yeah, other than that, guys, once again, thank you for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. And be sure to check us out over on superpodnetwork.com. Um, you can find a whole bunch of other shows, videos, blogs. We're currently in the middle of Spooktober, where we're doing a bunch of horror themed blogs for the month of October. Um, and other than that, be sure to check out the other shows on the network like Superpod Saga, Super Ghost Radio, Retro Rehab, which I believe is actually part of Superpod Saga now, Tommy's Video Game Ride Along, A Novel Console, Bar Silence, Find Time, The Elder Trolls Gaming Podcast, Remember 64, Gaming Together, Friday Night Gamecast, and of course the 3GNC shows, Gaming and Collecting, 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, and our newest member of the group, the Retro Wildlands. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
Yeah, have a good one.